Okay, so hey everybody. Yes, this is 4 p.m. and that's Rich Pisani, the brokers class. But you guys are so quiet. We actually, breaking. We took over the channel over here. We hijacked Rich's class for a minute just to do a little toast. Say hi, everybody. So as you can see, I'm just gonna try to flip my camera over here for a second. Never mind, I have no idea how to do that. And as you can see, this is our KW Calabasas office, or what's left of it. This is one side of our suite. We have the other side still fully occupied, and we are under construction, right? Doing a whole remodeling over here of the space. And basically, now it's the speech time. So say hi, everybody again. Cheers. So this is exciting. This office been here for about over 10 years, right? I think we're in 2020, 2010, so 10 years. 10 years this office has been here in this specific location. This is the third remodeling that this office is going. Initially over here in this space, and then Suite 120 just across those walls over there, and now again. It's going to be a 7,200 square feet of contemporary open space, more well-planned space or what have you. The future of brick and mortar, right? And super excited about that because they're talking about the sense of technology and replacing the agents, and brick and mortar is dead, and etc. and whatever. And yeah, it's going to be a dent in the history of humankind, and however you want to phrase that or frame that. And at the end of the day, I always say I wasn't around. I don't think any of you have been around, but just over 100 years ago, there was a pandemic too, 1918. And there was this thing that's called the flu, right? Maybe some of you feel like you've been that long around, but especially the last 6 months, right? But we survived it, and we passed, and the world changed a lot since then. So super excited about what the future brings and what the future holds, and once again to make the best use of what we have, and just to become a better version of ourselves. So once again, if you just join us, I'll do another round. I'm sitting over here. Hold on. I'm here at Rich's old cubicle over here, right over here, Rich. Sorry about it. And yes, I took over your fridge, so thank you for that. It's working great. So this is just a kind of 360 over here of the office and the beautiful people of Calabasas. Say hi, everybody. Hi. And then Hirsch. So sorry, Hirsch, but that's what it is, right? Yeah. And once again, yeah. So we're almost a week in, so we're looking into about 11 weeks or so, and super excited about once again what the future brings. And all of our offices went to that stage and everything, right? And Calabasas is next. So everybody, cheers, congrats, l'chaim. Here's for brighter future. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right, Rich. Thanks. Cheers, all yours, and enjoy the class with Rich. All right.
All right.
Class is out. The mic.
How do I follow that? Well, I talk about COVID forms. That's how I follow that. So that's very exciting, very exciting. So can't wait to see what that turns out to be. And so now you're into my class, which I'm going to be covering COVID forms, zip forms, for all kinds of transactions. So I'm going to share my screen here, and let's see. Hold on. There you go. You should be seeing my my zip forms, and it says forms library. Patricia, is that what we're seeing here?
Yes, I'm seeing your form libraries.
Great. So just a little trick here. If you look here at forms libraries, it says California Association of Realtors. That's a drop down, And there's many other forms depending on which office you're at, which association you belong to. Because I belong to several associations, the OC Realtors, all of their forms are right there. What else? SRAR, their forms are into zip forms that you can pull from. There was one other, CRMLS, for those agents in CRMLS. The coming soon authorization form is right there that you can pull from. So, but we're looking at California Association of Realtor forms, and if you then there's another drop down box that says all, but if you click on that, you can categorize it, or you can limit it to what kind of forms you're looking for. So I'm going to go, you see that they're bundling all the COVID forms together. So we're going to go to COVID, and those are all the forms in zip forms that are COVID related. So the first thing that I'm going to cover is the listing agreement addendum or amendment. Why is it called an addendum or an amendment? Well, it depends on when you place this form into the transaction. If you're doing it from the start, which you should be, if you're taking a listing, this should be an addendum to the listing as part of the listing. If you do it after you have an existing listing, then it's an amendment. So that's what that's about. So it's just like any other form. This is incorporated to the listing agreement, dated when it is dated. Regarding the property, broker would be us, be it Calabasas or Westside or Coastal Properties, and between the seller. So this is an agreement between the broker and the seller. The first paragraph is just talking about COVID-19, that we are in a pandemic situation. The last sentence in this, or last couple of sentences, is bolded, that just letting our sellers know that we as brokers and agents must comply with COVID directives. There are all sorts of laws that are associated with this pandemic and what's going on. The showing laws, we all know that. And just a little bit about that in regards to showings. It's not CAR, it's not that are making up these regulations or anything. This is Cal OSHA, which they regulate what we have to do in order to show property. If you remember early on in the pandemic, we weren't considered an essential business, so we couldn't do showings whatsoever. So it was CAR that fought with lawmakers and got us to be added to the list of essential businesses. But because of that, we are put on some restrictions by Cal OSHA as to what we have to follow in order to do that. So section 1 of this form, the listing agreement, which is the coronavirus addendum, which is RLA-CAA, is property showings. The first thing that the seller has to do is to agree to show the property. If they don't agree, then we'll cover paragraph 4, but basically if they're not agreeing to showing the property, you can't show the property. So the seller has to agree to show the property. So section 1A says, yes, I'm agreeing to show the property, and there's a couple of forms associated with showings that are attached to this. We'll go over that. So, and 1B is where the seller can dictate that if you're going to show my property, then I want some provisions on it. And one of them is that whoever's going to be looking at it, they provide verification that they are financially able to purchase the property, such as a verification of an all-cash purchase or a pre-qualification or pre-approval from a lender. I just got an email from an agent saying, "Is it city law that that buyers have to show proof of funds or pre-approval before they can visit a property?" I said, "It's not city law, but a seller can make that a provision of showing that property." So that's 1B2, or they can say they represent that they have previously viewed the property online. Basically, we want you to see it online, view it online before you actually, to make sure that this is one property that you're going to want to see. So those are the two things that the seller can dictate. Now, section 2 is marketing activities. So, what marketing activities are you going to let me do? So you can say, we are going to let you do all marketing activities, or they can limit what they'll allow you to do, like put up a sign or staging or you're avid, take photographs or all that. So if they're going to limit what they want you to do, then you would check those boxes here under section 2. Otherwise, they'll let you do whatever you need to do in order to market the property. Section 3 talks about post acceptance. What are you, the seller, going to allow the buyer to do in order to sell the property? And that's, appraisals, it's your avid, final VP, all of that, home inspections, all of that are post acceptance. Now, if your seller is saying, "I don't want you to do that," that kind of ties your hands, because you can't really sell it without doing these activities. So it's really important to get these agreements up front. As you can see, is you don't want to go through all this trouble about marketing this property, and then once it's sold to somebody, you have an accepted offer, the seller is suddenly not going to let you do inspections and whatnot, and you're going to be hard pressed to sell it. So then we get to section 4. Now, section 4 is, well, if the seller is not going to let you show it, or he's not going to let you do what you need to do in order to sell it, it's telling the seller, "Hey, Mr. Seller, you're limiting what I can do." So it may be necessary to modify the real estate agreement that we entered into, as far as language or whatnot, and you're really limiting it so that I may not be able to sell it for the amount of money you really think you want to get out of it. Because if you can't show it, you can't do an inspection. That's really limiting how you can sell that property. Section 5 deals with access to the property. It talks about Cal OSHA, the regulations, showing requirements is that the properties must be equipped with proper sterilizing. You need to provide hand sanitizer, disinfecting wipes. I know they're hard to find. Face coverings at the entrance of the property. To get away from disinfecting wipes, paper towels with a spray disinfectant, that would suffice. Showing requirement costs. Here's where you can tell Mr. Seller, "I need to pay for these supplies, but Mr. Seller, I'm going to ask you to pay for it." And you can pass the cost. If the seller agrees, you can pass the cost on to the seller. Cleaning and sanitizing. In previous instructions, it was the the job of the listing agent. It was the listing agent's sole responsibility to clean and disinfect infect that property before and after each showing. Now the directive is the showing agent. If it's the listing agent or if it's the buyer agent, that's the agent that is responsible for cleaning the property before and after every showing. So, and then cleaning and sanitizing costs, if you have a service, which would be a good side business, people, a service of going in before and after showings to clean and disinfect and infect a property, you can pass those costs on to your seller. So, broker marketing plan, if you want to attach a plan of how you're going to market it. Temporary withdrawal from market. Now, if this seller is not going to allow showings, it may be to your advantage that to withdraw it from the market and extend the listing date. This section is where you would do that. And then, that's pretty much this form. And I'm going to quickly look, to see if we have any questions.
No questions so far.
Okay, yeah, we're talking about a ping pong table and all that. So no. All right. So the next form that's attached to this form is the PEADS. So it's and the S needs to be signed by the seller, authorizing people access to the property in order to view the property. And if that property is tenant occupied, it also needs to be signed by the tenant. So the PEAD-S needs to be signed by the seller and tenant. If the tenant doesn't authorize showings, you can't show it. That's in the ordinance with the city. Any city or state or county, if the tenant isn't allowing showings and it's tenant occupied, you can't show it. So unfortunately, that's the way that is. So this form talks about what coronavirus is, gives them an advisory about it, and that they acknowledge that they're allowing people to enter the property. The signer says that understand that we are allowing access to the property to the best of your knowledge. You are not currently infected. The best of your knowledge, you not knowingly have been within the last 14 days in contact with anybody who is infected. You're not experiencing any signs of the infection, and you understand that there are people who don't exhibit any symptoms. And you will, and the very important part is 5F, you will inform broker, meaning the agent, if any, after the date of this document is signed, there is a change in your health condition. That is very important. So in regards to minors occupants, that the signer acknowledges that this also applies to minors occupying the property. Exemptions to the representations and the additional terms. What goes there? Here's what possibly could go there, is that I'm a first responder and I may be exposed to people with coronavirus. I, at this time, don't have, to my knowledge, don't have it, but I am exposed to these people, or I'm a nurse, or I'm a doctor. That would go, that you're telling everybody, hey, I have exposure to to people with this disease. So that's some of the exemptions that would go there. So so everybody signs this, the seller or the occupant sign this, and that's the end of this form. Then it goes into the mandatory showing requirements. Now, this form needs to be added to the listing online, either by in the MLS, either by a link or as an attachment. You should be adding this particular form to the listing. You know, these are the guidelines that we are going to follow in order in regards to the showing rules, because our office, all of our offices have adopted these as showing rules. Now, there may be other brokerages that make up their own rules. They're allowed to do that. So as long as they post them and they show what they are. So I do want to point out where it says cleaning and disinfecting, the agent who shows the property shall follow cleaning and disinfecting protocols. So that was that change, and everybody who is visiting, I believe LA City, it's hard to keep track of these, but I believe LA City is still 2 buyers and an agent. LA County, if you're outside of the city, there isn't a limit. It's a buying party, and that buying party, as in every case, everybody has to practice social distancing. So just be aware of that. You know, as the showing agent, it's a good practice to, prior to showing, going through opening doors, opening cabinets, having everything open the back door, you know, have everything open so that the buyer or the buying party or anybody in the buying party doesn't have to touch anything. We don't want anybody touching anything. And if they are going around touching, you need to keep track of what they've touched, because you, as the buying agent or the showing agent, excuse me, have to go back and sanitize everything that they've touched. So just be aware of that. I also want to point out, all visitors must wear face covering. For individuals with disabilities who cannot wear a face covering or face shield, the showing agent will engage in the interactive process.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we need to mute somebody. The interactive process with the individual to discuss any available reasonable accommodations. What does that mean? Basically, it means you have to have a conversation with this person as to whether there is some compromise, because it is face coverings. Now, everybody thinks of face masks, but it's not only limited to face masks. There are the face shields. But if that person is adamant saying, I have a doctor's note and I don't have to wear these things, you say, fine, that's great. I fully understand. I need to check with my seller if it's all right with them to allow you into the property, because it's ultimately the seller's decision whether to allow somebody in to the property who isn't following protocol. They may have a medical excuse. You may come up with, well, can I go in? Can we FaceTime while we're, try to come up with a compromise? But ultimately, if the seller says, I don't want anybody in there without a face covering, that's up to the seller, and that's what needs to be relayed. So this is the first form that we are going over, and that is the coronavirus addendum to the listing agreement. So I'm going to get out of that. Any questions yet? I guess not.
No new
Uh,
questions yet.
okay. So then we have another one that's the coronavirus addendum or amendment, LR, lease rental. So this is unlike the listing agreement, coronavirus addendum or amendment. This is only used for two purposes. Once a lease has been signed, it's either to extend the time for the tenant to occupy the premises, or to cancel because they have been affected by coronavirus. But this is only after a lease has been signed. And that's the only two things that this can do. It can extend the time for the tenant to occupy the premises, or it can mutually cancel it and the deposit goes back to the tenant. So that is the only reason to use this form. Okay? All right. So now let's go back to the forms. And which form is this? This is seller occupant. Sorry. I'm looking for which one? Okay. This is the PV. So in a lease, in a purchase, anyone who is visiting a property needs to sign a PV, this form. Anybody. It means an appraiser, you, the agent, it means an inspector, a photographer, anybody entering that premises. Now, you'll see up here, there's multiple lines because you can, if you're showing a lot of properties in one day, you can put multiple addresses on each form. Now, I will tell you that if you're using Glide, the Glide link in the MLS to fill out a PV, they will only let you do one PV per address. Which it makes sense because it's being sent directly to the listing agent, and I would recommend anybody who's if you're representing a buyer or a possible tenant to use that link in the MLS. It's so convenient. It makes it so easy. It's just a great thing. So here's the PV, which is just like the S that we just went over. It just says that, excuse me, that we the brokers will comply with COVID directives. We're not, we obey all fair housing laws. We are, what we're going to do is the purpose of the entry, what the rules are, don't touch, wear a mask, social distancing. It covers all of that. And, the most important thing is that the signer makes representations that they, once again, they don't have it. They haven't been exposed. They don't have any symptoms. And most importantly, if your health should change, then you need to inform the broker as soon as possible. Accompanying minors, that the adult signers are responsible for the adult minors. Basically, keep an eye on the kids. If you have clients who have their kids with them, then I would suggest, just saying, please keep your kids with, kids running around touching everything. That's not a good thing in this environment. So we ask that you keep an eye on your kids. Here's the exemptions. Once again, if you may have a a buyer or a tenant who, once again, is a frontline responder, or a nurse or a doctor. You put those exemptions there, and it's once again it's up to the seller to say whether they will still allow that person in the property. Everybody signs. Now, I want to point out here at the end, we acknowledge receipt of the initials below are not required, but can be used as evidence that the initiating party has received the completed form. Everybody will say, well, I need that confirmation signed. It's not mandatory. You can't force them. Is it a good practice? Yes, it's a good practice, but it is not mandatory, and it's important to understand what this form is. What this form is this is a record on any given day of who entered that property. Why? Because if they should come down with the virus, then we need to know when they were in that property and when did they sign this piece of paper. It's and that's why it's so important that these are gotten to the listing agent within 24 hours of the visit. So if you're visiting if you're visiting a property tomorrow, it's acceptable. Now, some listing agents, will be sticklers, but it's acceptable to send it the night before, but you can't send it 3 days prior. Why? Because you're saying on this day, or within the past 24 hours, you're saying you don't actively have the virus. You don't know that you've been in contact, and you haven't been within the past 14 days. So that's what this is for. So it's really important to get these. And I've seen in the MLS, bring your peds with you. No, 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 no. Back to those rules that we just looked at previously. Part of the rules is that no paperwork is going to be handed out or distributed at the property. That means there should be no brochures. If you're a listing agent, you can't leave any brochures, and people can't hand you PEDS on the spot. It has to be done electronically. So if they want to do it on the spot, but they send it to you via, DocuSign or however they're sending it, that's acceptable. But handing over a piece of paper is no. And you as the listing agent can't be sitting outside with blank PEDS to hand out. That's not acceptable. Okay? So, all right, that's that form.
So I put
Any
your questions in the chat
Yes.
box. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Wait, let me look. Okay. Chat. Okay. Are any of the coronavirus forms needed for commercial property? Absolutely. It's not just, it's every single coronavirus form is needed for commercial. It's not suddenly because it's a commercial property that we don't have to abide by these rules and regulations. It happens, people can be exposed to this virus in a commercial property. So this applies to all properties, the showings of all properties. From Carlos, is there still a maximum of 2 buyers per showing? Can kids be in addition to? In LA City, it's limited to a buyer's agent or a showing agent and 2 buyers of that property. That's it. So if one of those is a kid, then that's it. And if you're outside of LA City and LA County, it's a buying party. And there's no limit to the amount of individuals in a buying party. Once again, it's one buyer, but there may be four people looking at a property. They're a buying property. So there's no limit, and a kid could be a part of that. So that is that. We've gone over. Let's see. There is. I went over that. What? Well, nope. Sorry. There was a PED. There's one additional PED. Is there? Where is this? The PED LR. No, I'm just. It's not cooperating. Sorry. This is it. Okay. So the PED-LR, as in with the PED-S, which is signed by the seller and any tenants in the sale of a property, the PED-LR is its equivalent in regards to rentals, or leases. So this would need to be signed by the landlord and the tenant. Once again, authorizing the broker to show the property and whatnot. So this would be signed by the tenant and the landlord. And it basically says exactly the same thing, except it's geared toward the landlord and tenant. So there is the other one that I wanted to go over with the when you're in writing a purchase, the coronavirus addendum or amendment. Once again, it's an addendum if it's attached to the initial agreement, which would be the RPA or whatever purchase agreement you're using, or an addendum to add it to after the fact. So what this does is it gives all the advisories regarding the coronavirus. So we're going to jump to section number 3. If either buyer or seller is affected by unforeseen coronavirus circumstance, the affected party can deliver to the other a notice of unforeseen coronavirus circumstance. The NUCC shall identify and provide verification of the circumstance. Now, you only do that if, for one thing, this is optional. It has to be agreed upon by both the buyer and the seller. And if they don't agree to it, then it's not added to the agreement. So that's number one. Now, what I've seen is both sides sign this, and nothing else is checked. In the big box, section 4, extension of time upon delivery of the NUCC. If neither of these are checked, then this addendum is virtually useless, because what you're doing with this addendum is you're saying if either the buyer or seller are affected by coronavirus, we are going to agree beforehand how we're going to handle that. And if it's in regards to extension of time for contingencies, you're going to extend those contingencies by, it defaults to 30 days. You can change that to a different amount of days. or you can limit it to certain contingencies, but it makes a plan for what we're going to do if something happens and you can't fulfill your contingencies. Like if you can't get the inspector in there to do the investigation, then we're going to, Mr. Buyer and seller, we're going to extend that contingency for X amount of days. So, so that's that is what this form will do. And also, if for some reason you can't close escrow because the seller needs to clear something off of title and he can't get to that because offices are closed or any number of things, you can also extend escrow. So you would have to check these boxes in order to initiate these options. So make sure if you're representing the buyer, you want to agree in front that if something should happen, we're going to extend contingencies 30 days or 15 days or whatever. And so then what the buyer would have to do is say, I have a problem here because of coronavirus, and they'd have to give the form that we're going to talk about right after this, and then that contingency would kick in. So you would automatically extend that contingency. So what happens if after doing that you still can't close? So there are provisions in that section to handle just that. So if either party may cancel the agreement by delivering the written notice of cancellation to the other, and then you also you talk about the deposit. Buyer's deposit shall be returned to buyer minus fees and costs incurred by the buyer. And you don't need to do a notice to perform. You've already agreed that if you can't fulfill this because of coronavirus, then within that time frame, that either party can cancel. Do you have to cancel? You don't have to cancel. You can still continue, but I would write some addendum or something that says, okay, we're going to extend this again for another 30 days or whatever, or however long. So, and the same with the close of escrow. It's exactly the same as that. If you can't close within the specified time, if you still can't close, even after you've given the notice, then we'll just cancel this. And it does allow for the buyer's deposit to be released to the seller automatically within this agreement. That's this checking this box right here. So, and you can add other terms. I wouldn't mess with any other terms. So, and then if you've Section 5 is immediate mutual cancellation. Parties agreed to cancel the agreement at the time of this amendment by signing by all parties and a copy delivered to each party. This form, CBA, shall constitute irrevocable joint escrow. So if you've instilled this provision, and then you can resubmit this form and mutual cancellation of the agreement. So that's the coronavirus addendum or amendment. Even if your buyer doesn't, you should make your buyers aware of this form. It's your responsibility to make them aware that they have this option and do it in writing, because the one thing that you don't want to happen is that, is that they come back and say, I understand there was this addendum that I could have gotten this extension and you didn't tell me about it. At least tell them about it. If they want to try to get it instituted into the agreement, that's great. But if the seller doesn't agree to it, then it just doesn't. It's not a part of the agreement. Both sides have to agree. So once they've agreed to this, the way to kick this in is a notice of unforeseen coronavirus circumstances. So, in accordance with the terms and conditions of the coronavirus addendum, the CVA, agreed to by the parties, affected party, either the buyer or the seller, hereby gives notice to the other party, or this notice is provided for informational purposes, not directly tied to the agreement. I don't know why you would do that. It really has no effect. But here it is, anything loan related, a stay-at-home order, if things should get worse and we're all ordered to stay at home, then we can't do any of this stuff. So it's good to have this agreement in place beforehand. So that you would give this to the other party to say, hey, look, we agreed that if something should happen, that either we're going to cancel, or we're going to extend escrow, or extend contingencies, any of that. So here I'm giving you this notice, so that provision is kicking in. So that's that form. So that's pretty much all the forms. There are new questions. Let me look here. Okay.
Sorry, I keep talking over you.
That's okay. Is there anything in the form that makes the buyer and seller, whoever, show any documentation or proof for extension of contingencies? I'm not. Is there anything in the form that makes the buyer and seller, whoever, show any proof of I think I know what you're talking. In regards to the NUCC, do they, let's go back to that form. Oh, I didn't want to do that right here. Go here. Where's notice? So they would have to show proof that it's loss of income due to this, or a notary appointment. That any of these things, they would have to show proof of that they're impacted. If they're confirmed or they're any of these, a personal impact, or if there was a stay-at-home order and we no longer can get an appraisal, that's the order itself. You wouldn't really have to show proof, because the order itself would be the proof. But as far as like loan related, I would say yes, they would. The seller would ask for the proof from the lender in those circumstances. So I hope that answered your question, Courtney. Alan, can the seller reject? The seller cannot sign it. Yeah, he doesn't have to sign it, Alan. So can the buyer insist? Nope. It's mutually agreed upon. So, and here's the thing with the seller, there are circumstances where it's advantageous to the seller too to have these plans, to plan for this. Also, say you are going in a transaction, and then suddenly the stay-at-home order is, we are mandatorily ordered to stay at home for whatever reason. So then you can't get that appraisal done. You can't get that inspection done. Well, Mr. Seller, you can't go to another buyer because that's no new buyer is going to have the same problem. So it's really it's really advantageous to the seller too in that circumstance. So it's not only one-sided. It's not only benefiting the buyer. So it's good in these uncertain times to have these plans ahead of time in place. So and I think I just answered your other question about why is it advantageous to the seller. I think this is also a form that needs to be shown to the buyer as an option. Yes, yes, Carlos. Yes, you need to inform them that it's available to them, but also explain to them that it's the seller doesn't have to agree to it, but you hope that they will for all parties. So I think if there's no other questions, let me just double check. I think I've gone over pretty much all of these. If you're ever looking for the guidelines, the best practices, they're also here by themselves. Although they are attached to other, like the CAA, the RLA, CAA. They're right here. Remember when they were four pages, and the broker had to sign them, and I couldn't tell you how many times I had to sign this form. So that's that. And the posted rules of entry. Just to go over, these need to be posted on the listing at the front door. So both of these pages need to be posted. Now, do you have to leave them there? No, you can do it prior to, but as long as they're posted prior to a showing. I know that there's some condos that object to it, but this is the law. We're not doing this just because CAR or your local association says you do. It's the law that they have to be posted. And I just saw them posted at a grocery store, and they're using them all over. So that's that. So those are the coronavirus forms. I'm going to stop sharing. So if there's no other questions, then that's about it. And I did that in less than an hour, and even had a chance to toast. So
Albert.
anything else?
Carlos said signs at the door with a question mark. So
Oh yes, I guess there is. Yes. At every listing, this has to be posted. The posted rules of entry, and it's 2 pages. It gives the rules written, and it gives little pictures as to what the rules are, and it has to be posted at the entrance of the property. So either on the door or next to the door, but wherever anybody's going to enter a property that's either for sale or for lease, these rules have to be posted. Yes. Okay. Am I still? I wasn't sharing, was I? I just realized that.
Yeah, you had
Sorry.
shared.
So yes.
Alan wanted clarification. How many adults and kids are restricted for showings in the valley?
Well, if it's part of LA City, it's 2. Part of LA City, it's 2. If it's in an unincorporated area of LA, then it's a buying party, and there's not a number except that they would have to be able to practice social distancing. So yeah, once again, these are the what needs to be posted. So that's that. Anything else?
Oh, just lots of thank yous. Thank you
All
so much.
right.
This was really informative.
Okay. Thank you for joining me. Cheers.
Cheers.
And wish Calabasas luck in their remodel. We'll see you.
Bye.